Hello everyone, this is Chesses here, and in this video I'm not going to play any blitz as I was doing in my previous videos. Instead, this is going to be a short lecture finally, and here I want to show you one very interesting game that I find very instructive. It started with d4, d5, c4, the queen's gambit. Black declined it with e6, after knight c3 bolstered the center with c6, and here white played e3. So here I'm going to show briefly some ideas of the opening, then go to the middle game, and then we will see a very interesting sacrifice in the end and very strong attack. So let's keep going. This is called like the Semi-Slav variation when the pawns are here, but usually also the knight is on f6. When the knight isn't on f6, white has the possibility of going for e4 here, which looks quite great for white, but black has very unpleasant check on b4 with the bishop here. And it's quite an awkward situation for white, because if you go back with the knight, black goes c5 and very close to equalize the game. So this was seen, for example, in the game between Magnus Carlsen and Viswanathan Anand in their World Championship match in 2013. And instead of going for knight c3, you can go bishop d2, but here black takes the pawn on d4, of course. And this is a very sharp variation where you need to know much. So if you don't know any of these variations, you shouldn't go for e4 here, and instead e3 was played. By the way, this is a game played between Klaus Junge with white pieces and Senek Kotnauer with black pieces in 1942. So after e3, black could try to play f5 here, or reaching the stonewall pawn structure. This is the stonewall, a very solid and good opening, let's say. Then knight f6, bishop d6, knight here, castle short, and so on. But black decided to play knight d7, which also allows to go for f5 in future. But after bishop d3 somehow decided to went back to the most solid lines of the Semi-Slav. And after knight f3, bishop e7 was played, which is quite a passive move. Instead, most of modern people play d takes c4, and after bishop takes c4, this is the so-called Meran variation. b5 is the main idea here for black, and after, let's say, bishop d3, the main idea is that you need to protect this pawn, like a6 for example, and then you push c5, so the pawn is not hanging anymore. So then the bishop comes here. If white takes, the knight takes. Very active piece development for black, and lots of theory ahead. So in this game, bishop e7 was played instead. White decided to castle short and then b3. The idea is to develop the bishop on b2, which doesn't look that great, I believe, because yeah, the bishop seems to be doing nothing there. But on the other hand, it's very important to understand that on b2 it stands better than on c1 anyway. And it's also not that easy to find a better place for the bishop on the whole board. You can try to push e4 and develop it on this diagonal, let's say to g5, but well, what will he do there as well? Not that easy. On the other hand, on b2, in case if the game will get opened somehow, for example black pushed c5, then the bishop will be very great on this diagonal. So this is one of the ideas, like you are preparing for the opening of the game. b6 was played, bishop b2, bishop b7, so black also keeps developing, queen e2, connecting the rooks, c5 finally. And now you see that probably that bishop isn't that bad on b2 anymore, as it could seem. And we can guess that Klaus Junge already knew what he was going to do. He played rook a d1 here, placing the rook on the d file. But the question is, why this rook? Why not f rook? because seemingly, since the pawns are here, some tension in the center and probably some exchanges in future, the rook will come to d1, this to c1, and both of them will be employed and have a nice play along the open files. But he somehow decided to go with the rook from a1 to d1. And we will see in future that he had something in mind to do that. After queen c7, he decided to jump to e5. So if you want to understand why it's so important, why I am emphasizing it, this position was seen in one of the games of Alexei Duraev, a famous Russian grandmaster, very strong one, and he played rook c1 here. Yeah, that's quite impressive and says that he really needed to place the rooks on the c and d files. After rook a d8, the game was complicated, maneuvering and slow, not like the game that I was going to show you. This is the main game here, but as well I want you to see the finish of this game. So black decided to attack. Let's briefly go through the variations. And here black still tried to create some threats, but white got two very strong connected passed pawns here. And when black went desperado, attacking moves, the finishing position was quite impressive. 3 queens on the board, and here black resigned. So this is what I wanted to show you. That's why I didn't go to explain any moves. Okay, so instead knight e5 was played in the game. Pretty active move. Black decided to copy what white was doing, placing the rooks on d8. And now f4, bolstering the knight on e5. And the only drawback of this move is that now this e4 square can't be controlled by pawns anymore. If the square can't be controlled by a pawn, it's usually a weak square. So black decided to go knight e4 here. But let's stop for a moment and think why it's so important for black to block the diagonal. Because this rook, which he didn't put on d1, he already knew that he was going to push f4, and this rook would go to h3, creating some checkmating threats like bishop takes h7, let's say knight takes, and now queen here, and this is going to be checkmate. So this is why black played knight e4, but I believe that already here white is winning, and it's hard to believe, but it's true. Knight b5 was played, the beginning of the combination. Now if you go queen c8, which still was objectively better, you can, let's say, exchange here and take a pawn and just go back. So you're a pawn up and black can't really take this pawn. It's usually very scary to take such pawns, and there is definitely a reason for that, because we can try to start harassing that queen, and after queen b4 bishop c3 it just has no squares to go and black should resign. This is why after knight b5 Katnauer played queen b8, but now knight takes d7, rook takes d7 and d takes c5, opening the bishop on b2, and the point is that black can't really take on c5 by anything else than a knight, because then you take here and take on d7, so the d5 pawn is pinned. This is why black has to take with a knight. And here, if you want, you can try to pause the video and try to find the way the Jungi played in this game. Okay, so I hope you found it, and the move is bishop takes h7, very typical combination. It's called the Lasker sacrifice, and I'll show you that game of Lasker in this video as well. So after king takes h7, of course denying the sacrifice isn't the way, because after queen h5 the bishop goes back and queen h7 mate is unavoidable. So of course we should take queen h5 check, king g8, And now the other bishop takes on g7, destroying black's king's shelter. And if he takes, then it's very important to give a check with the queen first, because he can't really escape. If he goes here, you checkmate in 1. If he goes somewhere else, you have this rook f3, and then just this kind of checkmate. But if you don't insert that check on a g4 and play like rook g3, rook f3, then he can add the other defender in. And after queen g4 now, he has this knight g5, blocking the file for our pieces. So yeah, it's important to give this check. If f6, you can go like bishop h6 here with the idea of queen g6 check, and let's say bishop d6 and rook f3, trying to checkmate him still. Or you can start with the rook f3 immediately, and it's more or less the same stuff here right now. So let's say here, you can go up this one, rook h3. So basically you can try to checkmate him more or less slowly, because black has no way to escape from the threats. Say if he goes knight e4, you have this check, rook here, and now you can exchange. Check, the only move is queen f8, and of course rook h8 check is coming, so you win the queen and the game. So in the game f5 was played, and now bishop e5 is a strong move. The thing is that the queen is hanging on b8, and also queen g6 check is coming. So it's basically a checkmate. The only move seems to be queen e8, but then you give a check, and now you see that the king can't escape anymore, because the queen is there, and queen g7 checkmates easily. So black decided to give up the queen, but of course the rest is simple. It's just an extra queen and 2 pawns in exchange for 2 bishops, knight d6. So he keeps attacking. Knight a4, b5. The rest isn't that important for us, but I want you to see that he kept attacking here, and he showed quite a good technique here as well. And only one of the last moves, like here, he took and went for queen e7, but instead there was also another very beautiful variation. He could take on e6. This was even stronger than taking with a queen. If rook takes d1 now, then king f2. And the point is that this queen e8 checkmate is coming, and it's difficult to save the game for black. If check, of course you just approach the rook. So he should give up the rook again, but now his bishop is hanging, and also when f7 check is coming, if the king goes, you give a check, bishop covers, and you take it. So bishop d5 should be played, and now just let's say e4, and black should resign. And now let me show you the game played by Lasker, where this sacrifice came from. So d5, e3 was played, knight f6, b3, e6, bishop b2. So Lasker developed the bishops more or less in that fashion that Jungi did, but without the pawn center on d4 and c4. And then he started bringing pieces to the king side, trying to start the attack there. And here knight e5, already trying to exchange the defenders of the black king, and also clearing the way for the queen to the king side. So after knight takes e5, he took with the bishop, queen c6, and now knight h5. He played queen e2 first, and after a6, because bishop b5 probably was a scary thing for black, even though I can't see a point of the move. But still a6 was played. So now knight h5 was played. He took, and that was a very bad decision probably, but still black didn't have anything else to do. So now takes, king takes, queen h5, and we see more or less the same stuff here going. And in case of king takes g7, again, this is important to give this check, and only then you go rook f3. So if you play rook f3 here, then black can escape with rook h8, and in case of the check, bishop g5. So if rook takes g5, king f6, and black king escapes because there is no g5 square for the queen. And in case of queen takes g5, you go with your king back, and you're okay here, black is better. So queen g4 was played in the game, king h7, rook f3, e5. So now the queen comes to defense, but then again, black would be okay here, having two bishops and rook for the queen, but queen d7 comes and both the bishops are hanging, so this is basically a game over here, and so very soon black resigned. So that was quite a typical sacrifice, and one very interesting moment here is that after f5, Lasker would probably go for bishop e5 again, like in the Junge game, but there we were hitting the queen. But this game shows that it wasn't really important that were we hitting the queen or not, checkmate is coming anyway. Let's say if you go like this, just check here, and after king h8 you have again this rook f3 and rook h3 delivering the checkmate. So I hope you like this game. It was quite a short one and pretty easy, I guess, but still very instructive to see how slowly he built this setup, trying to start the attack. Bishop on d3, bishop on b2, they are very strong. Then he started bringing his rooks, the knight comes to e5, bolstering it with f4, and then rook f3, rook h3 can be played at some point. Be careful though, after rook f3, the bishop can be hitting your rook at some point, so it's also something to watch out for. But still, knight e4 was so tempting, and now knight b5 comes, and white is already winning here after move 14. Okay, I hope you like this kind of video. Write in the comments below if you like that format or not, and what you would like to see on the channel. You know, something like that, like subscribe, or you know, all that stuff that usually some bloggers say. And anyways, thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos, hopefully.